The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was bigger than any building on Earth. Its walls were made of a strange blue metal that seemed to glow from within. Hundreds of different alien species filled the seats, their strange forms creating a sea of colors and shapes that no human artist could have imagined. Ambassador Kyle Morgan walked slowly to the center of the hall. His black suit looked plain compared to the flowing robes and shimmering skins of the aliens around him. But Kyle didn't care about looking impressive. He was here for justice. 3 years had passed since that terrible day. 3 years since the Krelvax Empire attacked the human colony ship Horizon's Dawn without warning. The ship had been carrying 12,000 people to start a new life on a distant planet. There were families on that ship. Children, teachers, doctors, farmers, and engineers. None of them had been soldiers. None of them had been armed. The Krelvax destroyed them all in less than 10 minutes. Kyle stopped in the center of the hall and looked up at the council leaders. They sat high above everyone else on floating platforms. The sight was meant to make visitors feel small and unimportant. But Kyle had seen too much to be impressed by fancy chairs. Members of the Galactic Council, Kyle began, his voice steady and clear. 3 years ago, humanity asked for justice. We showed you the evidence. We showed you the recordings from the Horizon's Dawn's last moments. We showed you the list of the dead, including 2,000 children. A ripple of whispers went through the crowd. Some of the aliens made clicking sounds that Kyle knew meant they were bored. Others made low humming noises that showed they didn't care. After 3 years of trying to work with these creatures, Kyle had learned to read their moods. The Krelvax delegate, Vorthresh, floated forward. Its body was made of living crystal that changed colors as it moved. When it spoke, its voice sounded like breaking glass. The primitive mammals continue to cry about their lost ship. The galaxy has more important matters to discuss. Several delegates laughed. The sound was strange, coming from so many different types of throats and vocal cords, but Kyle recognized mockery in any language. The Krelvax have already explained, Vorthresh continued. Your ship entered restricted space. It was destroyed according to our laws. The matter is closed. The Horizon's Dawn was in neutral space, Kyle said firmly. We have shown the navigation records 100 times. Your ships crossed 3 sectors to attack them. Your records mean nothing, Vorthresh replied. Human technology is primitive. Your navigation systems are full of errors. The Council has already decided this. Kyle looked around the room. The Altarians, tall beings with 6 arms and golden skin, were nodding in agreement. The Zephori, who looked like giant floating jellyfish, pulsed with colors that meant satisfaction. Even the Wanderers, the mysterious race that claimed to be neutral in all conflicts, seemed to agree with the Krelvax. Then you leave us no choice, Kyle said quietly. The room fell silent. For the first time, many of the aliens actually looked at the human ambassador. What does the primitive mean by that? Asked the Altarian representative. Kyle touched the small device on his wrist. Admiral Lisa Carter, the Council has refused our final diplomatic solution. Operation Reckoning is authorized. His words echoed in the huge hall. Some of the aliens laughed again. Others made sounds of dismissal. They thought it was an empty threat. After all, humanity had only been traveling between stars for 50 years. The Krelvax had been doing it for 3,000 years. What could humans possibly do? Far away from the council hall in the darkness of space, things were already beginning to move. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of the battleship Washington. Around her, the crew worked quietly at their stations. They had been waiting for this moment for 3 years. Every person on the ship had known someone on the Horizon's Dawn. Lisa's own niece had been one of the children. All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Carter, she said into the communication system. Operation Reckoning is approved. Begin Phase 1. Across human space, 200 warships powered up their engines. They had been built in secret, using every bit of knowledge humanity had gained from studying captured alien technology. The other races thought humans were too new to space travel to be dangerous. They thought Earth had maybe 30 or 40 combat ships. They were wrong. Captain Jake Coleman commanded the battlecruiser Vengeance. He was 35 years old, young for such a position. but he had proven himself in the border conflicts with pirates. More importantly, he understood something that many of the aliens didn't. Humans learned fast when they were angry. Navigation, set course for the Krelvax border, Jake ordered. Best speed. Yes, sir, replied Lieutenant Amy Foster. She was 28, one of the youngest bridge officers in the fleet, but she could plot a hyperspace jump faster than any computer. Course laid in. We can be there in 18 hours. Good. Weapons, I want all systems checked 3 times before we arrive. Already on it, Captain, said Commander Bill Norton. The weapons officer was a 40-year-old veteran who had spent the last 3 years designing new ways to destroy Krelvax shields. The pulse cannons are online. The new piercing missiles are loaded. Those crystal bastards won't know what hit them. Jake nodded. He understood Bill's anger. They all felt it. But they had to be smart about this. The galaxy thought humans were emotional creatures who couldn't control themselves. They were about to learn that human anger could be very, very controlled. Back on the council station, Kyle was still standing in the center of the hall. The aliens were still laughing and dismissing his words, but a few of the smarter ones were starting to look worried. "What is Operation Reckoning?" asked the Wanderer delegate. Its voice was soft, almost a whisper, but everyone heard it. "You'll find out soon enough," Kyle said. He turned to leave, then stopped. "But I'll tell you this much. You all made a mistake. You thought our requests for justice were weakness. You thought our attempts at diplomacy meant we couldn't fight. You gave us 3 years to prepare while you laughed at us." He looked directly at Vorthresh. "Your people killed 12,000 innocent humans, men, women, and children who were just looking for a new home. You celebrated it. You mocked our pain. And now, you're about to learn what happens when humanity stops asking nicely." Kyle walked out of the hall. Behind him, the aliens had stopped laughing. Some were already calling their home worlds, trying to find out what the humans were doing. But it was too late for warnings. In her private office on the Washington, Admiral Carter looked at a photo on her desk. It showed a young girl with bright eyes and a big smile. Her niece Emma had been 8 years old when the Krelvax killed her. "This is for you, sweetheart," Lisa whispered. She put the photo away and returned to the bridge. There was work to do. The fleet moved through space like silent hunters. They didn't broadcast their positions. They didn't send threats or warnings. They just moved steadily toward their target. The Krelvax had dozens of colony worlds and hundreds of military bases. Their empire was vast and powerful. They had weapons that could destroy moons and shields that had never been breached. They were so confident in their power that they hadn't even increased their defenses after destroying the Horizon's Dawn. That would be their second mistake. Their first had been killing innocent humans and thinking there would be no consequences. As the human fleet jumped into hyperspace heading for Krelvax territory, the galaxy continued with its normal business. Trade ships moved between worlds. Diplomatic meetings were held. Scientists shared discoveries. None of them knew that everything was about to change. The humans were coming to settle the score, and when they arrived, the entire galaxy would learn a lesson about underestimating the new species from Earth. Captain Jake Coleman felt the familiar shudder as the Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace. Through the main viewing screen, he could see the Krelvax defense station. It was huge, the size of a small moon, covered in weapons, and surrounded by a shimmer of energy shields. For 3,000 years, no enemy had ever broken through a station like this. "All ships reporting in, Captain," Amy Foster announced from her station. 200 ships ready for combat. Jake stood up from his command chair. Around the Krelvax station, human ships were appearing from hyperspace like wolves surrounding prey. The galaxy had never seen humanity fight as one unified force before. They were about to get an education. "Sir, the Krelvax are hailing us," Amy said. "They're demanding to know our intentions." "Put them on screen," Jake ordered. The image of a Krelvax commander appeared. Its crystal body was shifting between red and orange, colors that Jake knew meant anger and confusion. "Human vessels, you are in Krelvax territory without permission. Leave immediately or be destroyed." Jake almost smiled. Even now, facing 200 warships, the Krelvax thought they were in control. "This is Captain Coleman of the Earth ship Vengeance. We're here to collect a debt. 12,000 human lives, to be exact. The Krelvax commander's crystal body flashed bright red. You dare threaten the Krelvax Empire? Your primitive ships will be space dust in minutes. Bill, Jake said calmly, show them our new toys. Commander Bill Norton pressed a single button. Every human ship fired at exactly the same moment. But these weren't normal weapons. For 3 years, human scientists had studied every piece of Krelvax technology they could find. They had learned that Krelvax shields worked by bending space around their ships. It was brilliant technology, but humans had found a way around it. The new weapons didn't try to break through the shields. Instead, they created tiny tiers in space itself, allowing the missiles to skip past the shields entirely. The Krelvax commander had just enough time to flash purple, the color of fear, before the defense station's command center exploded. All across Krelvax space, similar scenes were playing out. Human fleets appeared without warning at military bases, shipyards, and weapon factories. They didn't attack cities or civilian targets. They were very specific about what they destroyed. On the planet Krelvax Prime, Supreme Commander Vorthresh watched the reports coming in with growing horror. In less than an hour, 30% of the Krelvax military was gone. Defense stations that had stood for centuries were nothing but debris. The newest warships, the pride of the Empire, were floating scrap metal. How is this possible? Vorthresh demanded. Its body was cycling through colors so fast it was hard to look at. The humans are primitives. They've only been in space for 50 years. Supreme Commander, one of its assistants said, its voice shaking with fear. The humans appear to have studied our technology. They've found weaknesses we didn't know existed. Through the windows of the command center, Vorthresh could see lights in the sky. Those lights were human dropships, carrying ground forces to the planet's surface. The Krelvax had always thought their homeworld was safe, protected by the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. But that fleet was burning in space, and now humans were landing on their sacred ground. Marine Sergeant Paul Davis checked his rifle one more time as the dropship shook around him. He was leading a squad of 12 Marines, all volunteers for this mission. Every one of them had lost someone on the horizon's dawn. Remember, Paul said to his squad, we're not here to hurt civilians. We're here to make sure the Krelvax can never hurt anyone else again. Military targets only. Yes, Sergeant, his squad replied in unison. The dropship landed hard, and the doors burst open. Paul and his Marines rushed out into the strange purple sunlight of Krelvax Prime. The gravity was lighter here, making them faster and stronger than normal. They had trained for this. The Krelvax military base ahead of them was in chaos. Crystal soldiers were running in all directions, their bodies flashing with fear and confusion. They had never faced an enemy on their home soil before. They didn't know what to do. Paul's squad moved like a machine. They destroyed weapon stockpiles, communication towers, and vehicle depots. When Krelvax soldiers tried to fight back, the humans responded with overwhelming force. But when they found Krelvax civilians hiding in the base, they simply told them to leave. Why? One young Krelvax asked. Its body was small and clear, showing its youth. Why don't you kill us all? Paul looked at the young alien. Because we're not monsters. We're just making sure you can never be monsters again. The young Krelvax didn't understand, but it ran away with the other civilians. Paul watched them go, then got back to work. There were still targets to destroy. In space above the planet, Admiral Lisa Carter commanded the overall operation from the Washington. Her staff was feeding her constant updates from all fronts. The operation was going better than planned. Krelvax resistance was crumbling everywhere. Admiral, her communications officer, called out, "We're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're ordering us to stop immediately." Lisa almost laughed. "Tell the Council we'll stop when the job is done, not before." "Admiral, the Altarians are mobilizing their fleet. The Zephori, too." "Let them come," Lisa said coldly. "We have ships watching their borders. If they move against us, they'll learn the same lesson the Krelvax are learning." On the Council station, panic was spreading. Representatives from dozens of species were watching live feeds of the human assault. They had never seen anything like it. The humans weren't just winning. They were demonstrating a level of tactical brilliance that scared everyone. The Altarian representatives' 6 arms were waving frantically. The humans have destroyed the Krelvax fleet, the entire fleet, in one day. This is impossible, the Zephori delegate pulsed. The Krelvax have the strongest military in the galaxy. Had, said a quiet voice. Everyone turned to see Ambassador Kyle Morgan entering the chamber. They had the strongest military, past tense. Kyle walked to the center of the room, just as he had done before. But this time no one was laughing. Every alien in the room was staring at him with what their species used for eyes. You thought we were weak, Kyle said simply. You thought we were primitive. You forgot that humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years before we reached the stars. We just needed time to adapt our knowledge to space combat. This is barbarism, the Altarian shouted. No, Kyle replied. Barbarism was destroying a ship full of families. Barbarism was laughing when we asked for justice. This is consequences. Back on Krelvax Prime, the assault continued. Human forces had taken control of every major military installation on the planet. The Krelvax military command structure had completely collapsed. Some crystal soldiers tried to surrender, but they didn't know how. Their culture had never considered the possibility of losing. Captain Jake Coleman coordinated the space operation from the Vengeance. His crew had performed perfectly. Not a single human ship had been seriously damaged. The new weapons and shields had worked better than anyone had hoped. Captain, Amy Foster said, we're detecting several Krelvax civilian ships trying to leave the system. Let them go, Jake ordered. We're not here for civilians. Sir, shouldn't we stop them? They could be carrying military personnel. Jake shook his head. Let them run. Let them spread the word about what happened here. The galaxy needs to know that humans protect their own. By the end of the day, the Krelvax Empire's military might was completely destroyed. Every warship, every weapon factory, every military base was gone. But the cities were untouched. Hospitals still operated. Schools still taught young Krelvax. Farms still grew food. The humans had been surgical in their destruction, taking away the Krelvax's ability to hurt others while leaving their ability to live in peace. It was a message to the entire galaxy. Humans could be merciful, but only after justice was served. Supreme Commander Vorthresh stood in the ruins of its command center. Its crystal body had turned a dull gray, the color of defeat. In 3,000 years of Krelvax history, they had never lost a war. They had never even imagined it was possible. A human Marine approached, weapon lowered but ready. It was Sergeant Paul Davis. Supreme Commander Vorthresh, by order of Admiral Lisa Carter, you are commanded to appear before the Galactic Council to answer for the murder of 12,000 human civilians. Vorthresh's body flickered weakly. You've destroyed everything. Our entire military, our pride. You destroyed 12,000 innocent lives, Paul replied. You're still alive. Be grateful we're more merciful than you were. The news spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. Every communication network, every quantum relay, every messenger ship carried the same impossible story. The Krelvax Empire had fallen in a single day. The humans had done the impossible. On the council station, representatives sat in stunned silence as they watched the footage. Human ships moving in perfect coordination. Krelvax shields failing against unknown weapons. The mighty crystal fleet burning in the darkness of space. The Altarian representative, whose name was Zixtel, had turned pale yellow, the color of his species' fear. His 6 arms trembled as he spoke to his aide. Send word to our fleet. Tell them to hold position. Do not, under any circumstances, approach human space. Around the Great Hall, similar orders were being given. The Zephori were calling their ships home. The Draknari were putting their warriors on high alert. Even the mysterious wanderers seemed nervous, their shadowy forms flickering more than usual. Ambassador Kyle Morgan entered the hall flanked by someone new. Admiral Lisa Carter walked beside him wearing her full military uniform. Her face was calm, but her eyes held a hardness that made several aliens step back. "Members of the Galactic Council," Lisa said, her voice carrying through the silent hall. "The Krelvax military has been neutralized. They can no longer threaten anyone." "You destroyed them," Zixtel shouted. "You annihilated their entire fleet." "Yes," Lisa replied simply. "They killed 12,000 of our people. We made sure they could never do it again." The Zephori delegate pulsed with angry colors. "This is not how civilized species behave. There are rules, protocols." Kyle stepped forward. "You mean the same rules that were supposed to protect civilian ships? The same protocols that should have brought justice for the Horizon's dawn? We tried your rules. You ignored them. You've thrown the entire galaxy into chaos," another delegate cried out. "No," Lisa said firmly. "We've introduced something new to the galaxy: accountability." She touched a control on her wrist, and a hologram appeared in the center of the hall. It showed human fleets positioned at the borders of every major galactic power. They weren't attacking. They weren't even making threats. They were just there, waiting. "Every ship you see is equipped with the same weapons that defeated the Krelvax," Lisa explained. "We're not going to attack anyone who hasn't attacked us. But if any of you are thinking about testing us, I suggest you reconsider." The hall erupted in nervous whispers and clicks and hums. Every species had their own way of showing fear, and all of them were on display. Meanwhile, on Earth, President John Harper was addressing humanity from his office. His face appeared on every screen, every device across human space. "My fellow humans," he began, "today we have shown the galaxy that we will not be victims. We offered peace and it was rejected. We asked for justice and we were mocked. So, we took justice into our own hands." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But this is not the end. It's a beginning. We still want peace, we still want to be part of the galactic community. But that community must understand that human lives have value. Human deaths have consequences." On the medical ship Mercy, Dr. Emma Rodriguez was treating wounded Krelvax civilians. Even though the humans had tried to avoid civilian casualties, some had been hurt in the chaos. Emma worked without sleep, saving crystal lives with the same dedication she would show to human patients. A young Krelvax, its body flickering with confusion, asked her, "Why do you help us? We are your enemies." Emma looked at the young alien while adjusting its treatment. "You're not my enemy. Your military was our enemy. You're just someone who needs help." The Krelvax didn't understand. In their culture, victory meant total domination. The defeated were enslaved or destroyed. This human concept of selective justice was completely foreign to them. Back on the council station, a new voice spoke up. It was Thexar, the great warrior of the Draknari. His species were warriors respected and feared throughout the galaxy. When he spoke, everyone listened. "The humans have done what we could not," Thexar said. His four arms crossed over his massive chest. "They defeated the Krelvax completely, yet showed mercy to the defenseless. This is true strength. You support this barbarity?" Zixtel asked in shock. "I support strength combined with wisdom," Thexar replied. "The humans could have destroyed every Krelvax world. They chose not to. They could have enslaved the survivors. They chose not to. They took only what was needed to ensure justice and safety. This is not barbarity. This is honor." The Draknari warrior turned to face Kyle and Lisa. Then, to the shock of everyone present, he bowed. The great warrior of the Draknari had never bowed to anyone. "The Draknari request an alliance with Earth," Thexar announced. "We wish to learn from your kind." The hall went completely silent. The Draknari were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. If they were aligning with humanity, everything would change. Captain Jake Coleman was dealing with a different situation aboard the Vengeance. They had captured several high-ranking Krelvax military leaders, including Vorthresh. The former Supreme Commander sat in the ship's brig, its crystal body dull and lifeless. "You don't understand what you've done," Vorthresh said to Jake. "The Krelvax kept order in our sector. Without our fleet, pirates and raiders will run wild. Then maybe you should have thought about that before attacking innocent civilians, Jake replied. Besides, we're not leaving you completely defenseless. You can have police forces, defensive stations around your planet. You just can't have a military that can threaten others. You're leaving us weak, Forthresh protested. We're leaving you alive, Jake corrected, which is more than you left the people on the Horizon's Dawn. Lieutenant Amy Foster approached with a data pad. Captain, we're receiving requests from 17 different species. They all want to open diplomatic channels with Earth. Jake nodded. They're scared. Good. Fear will keep them honest. Sir, is that really what we want? To be feared? Jake thought about it for a moment. I'd prefer to be respected for our kindness. But if fear is what it takes to protect human lives, then yes, that's what we want. On a small colony world near the edge of human space, a memorial service was being held. The families of the Horizon's Dawn victims had gathered to remember their lost loved ones. Many of them were watching the news from Krelvac space. Mary Johnson had lost her daughter and 2 grandchildren on the Horizon's Dawn. She watched the footage of Krelvac's military bases burning and felt something she hadn't expected. Sadness. It doesn't bring them back, she said to her neighbor. No, her neighbor agreed, but it makes sure no other family has to go through what we did. Mary nodded slowly. That was something, at least. Justice wouldn't return her family, but it might save other families from the same pain. The Wanderers, the mysterious race that claimed to be the oldest in the galaxy, called for an emergency session of the Inner Council. This was the highest level of galactic government, usually only convened for matters of extreme importance. The Wanderer representative spoke in its whispering voice. We propose full membership for humanity in the Inner Council, with all associated rights and responsibilities. The reaction was immediate and loud. The Inner Council had only 12 members, all species that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. Humanity had been in space for only 50 years. This is unprecedented, Zixtel protested. They're too young, too violent. They defeated the Krelvacs in a day, the Wanderer replied. They showed mercy when they could have shown cruelty. They have proven themselves. I agree, Thexar said firmly. The humans have shown they are not to be ignored or dismissed. Better to have them as equals than as enemies. The debate raged for hours. Some species argued that humanity was too dangerous. Others argued that they were too new to space. But in the end, the vote was called. It passed. Not unanimously, but it passed. Humanity was now part of the Inner Council, with a voice equal to civilizations that had existed for millennia. It was a stunning turn of events that no one could have predicted just days ago. Admiral Lisa Carter received the news aboard the Washington. She didn't smile, but something in her shoulders relaxed slightly. They're taking us seriously now, she said to her staff. Good. Maybe next time they'll listen when we ask for justice peacefully. The galaxy had indeed shuddered when the humans came to settle the score. But it wasn't just from fear. It was from the realization that a new power had arrived, one that wouldn't follow the old rules of ignoring injustice and allowing the strong to prey on the weak. The humans had introduced something new to the galaxy, the idea that actions had consequences and that those consequences would be enforced. The Vorthan Confederacy had thought they were safe. They hadn't directly attacked humanity after all. They had simply sold weapons to the Krelvacs, just business as usual in the galaxy. But as their leadership gathered for an emergency meeting, they discovered something terrifying. Every secret they had was displayed on the main screen of their command center. Military codes, defense plans, the locations of hidden bases, financial records showing bribes and illegal deals. Everything. How is this possible? The Vorthan Prime Minister demanded, his tentacles writhing in panic. His intelligence chief could barely speak. The humans, sir. They've been inside our systems for years, since right after the Horizon's Dawn was destroyed. Years. The Prime Minister's color changed from blue to a sick green. They've been watching us for years? On Earth, Captain Steve Miller sat in a small office that didn't look like much. But from this room, he commanded something the galaxy had never seen before. Economic warfare on a galactic scale. How are our acquisitions going? Steve asked his team. Better than expected, sir, his aide, Jennifer, replied. 3 Vorthan corporations have already collapsed. Their stock prices dropped 90% when we released those financial records, showing they knowingly sold defective weapons to pirates. Steve nodded. The Vorthans had sold the weapons that destroyed the Horizon's dawn, knowing full well they would be used against civilians. Now every dirty secret of every Vorthan company was being exposed. What about their government? Steve asked. They're requesting a meeting with Ambassador Morgan. They want to negotiate. Good. Let them sweat a little longer, then we'll talk. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Every corporation, every government, every organization that had profited from humanity's losses was finding their secrets exposed, their finances crashing, their power crumbling. The Merchants Guild, which had refused to investigate the companies that sold weapons to the Krelvax, woke up to find human corporations had bought controlling interests in half their member companies overnight. The humans had been quietly building economic power for 3 years, and now they were using it. Ambassador Kyle Morgan met with the Vorthan delegation in a small room on the council station. The Vorthans were desperate, their leader practically begging. Please, Ambassador Morgan, call off your economic attacks. Our entire civilization is collapsing. Kyle looked at them calmly. You sold weapons to the Krelvax knowing they would be used to kill civilians. You profited from our people's deaths. It was just business, the Vorthan leader protested. We sell weapons to everyone. And now you're facing the consequences of that business, Kyle replied. Here's our offer: complete surrender of all military assets, full reparations to the families of the Horizon's Dawn victims, and human oversight of your weapons manufacturing for the next century. That's outrageous. You're not even attacking us militarily. We don't need to, Kyle said simply. We can destroy you economically, and we will, unless you agree to our terms. The Vorthan leader's tentacles drooped in defeat. He knew they had no choice. The humans had found a way to wage war without firing a shot, and it was just as effective as any military campaign. Meanwhile, the warrior race known as the Draknari had formally signed an alliance with Earth. Great warrior Thexer himself traveled to Earth to meet President John Harper. It was the first time a Draknari leader had ever visited another species' homeworld as an equal. Your people fight with their minds as much as their weapons, Thexar said to President Harper. This is something we wish to learn. We've had thousands of years of practice fighting each other, Harper replied. We've learned that sometimes the best victory is the one where no one dies. Yet you destroyed the Krelvax fleet completely. Because sometimes violence is the only language some people understand. The key is knowing when to use which approach. Thexar nodded his massive head. This wisdom is why we seek alliance with you. The galaxy has grown complacent, allowing injustice because it was easier than fighting it. You've reminded us that standing up for what's right is worth the fight. On the council station, young Lieutenant Grace Evans had just started her posting at the new human embassy. It was now the busiest embassy on the station, with representatives from dozens of species waiting to meet with human officials. As Grace walked through the corridors, she noticed how differently the aliens treated her now. Before, humans had been ignored, pushed aside, treated as barely worth noticing. Now aliens stepped out of her way. Some even bowed. She didn't like it much. Respect born from fear wasn't the kind of respect humanity had wanted. But it was better than being ignored while their people were killed. An old wanderer approached her. These mysterious beings rarely spoke to anyone directly, so Grace was surprised when it addressed her. Your species has changed everything, the wanderer said in its whispering voice. For 3,000 years, the strong have preyed upon the weak in this galaxy. Now, the weak have teeth. We're not weak, Grace replied. We just prefer peace. There's a difference. Yes, the wanderer agreed. That difference is what makes you dangerous. A warrior species fights because it must. You fight because you choose to. That choice makes you unpredictable. Grace thought about that as the wanderer drifted away. Unpredictable. Perhaps that was humanity's greatest weapon. In the ruins of the Krelvax Empire, something unexpected was happening. Young Krelvax were approaching human aid stations not for medical help but to learn. They wanted to understand these strange beings who had defeated them so completely, yet showed mercy. Dr. Emma Rodriguez found herself teaching a class of young Krelvax about human medicine. Their crystal bodies flickered with curiosity as she explained how humans treated injuries and diseases. "You heal your enemies," one young Krelvax said, its voice full of wonder. "This makes no sense." "Today's enemy might be tomorrow's friend," Emma replied. "We've learned that healing can be more powerful than hurting." "But you destroyed our entire military." "Yes, because they were a threat." "You're not a threat. You're just young beings trying to understand the universe. That makes you potential friends, not enemies." The young Krelvax flickered in a pattern Emma had learned meant deep thought. These young ones were beginning to understand something their elders couldn't. Strength didn't always mean destruction. The galaxy's economy was reshaping itself around human influence. Earth-based corporations were buying up assets across known space, but they weren't doing it randomly. They were specifically targeting companies that had profited from conflict and suffering. Captain Steve Miller's Economic Warfare Unit had identified over 300 corporations that had sold weapons, information, or support to those who attacked civilians. Every one of them was now under assault, not from bombs or lasers, but from hostile takeovers, exposed secrets, and financial manipulation. "Sir," Jennifer reported, "the Altarian Weapons Consortium is requesting a meeting. They want to negotiate a peaceful transfer of assets." "They're learning," Steve said with satisfaction. "Much better to negotiate than to be destroyed. Set up the meeting." The Galactic Council convened another emergency session. This time, it wasn't about military action, but about economic rules. Several species were demanding regulations to prevent the kind of economic warfare humans were waging. Ambassador Kyle Morgan stood before them once again. "You want protection from economic consequences? Where was that protection when human trade ships were raided? When our merchants were cheated? When our colonists were sold defective equipment that led to deaths?" The hall was silent. "You created this system," Kyle continued. "A system where the strong take from the weak without consequence. We're just playing by your rules, and we're better at it than you are." Zixtel, the Altarian representative, stood up. His 6 arms were folded in what Kyle knew was a gesture of submission. "What do you want from us? What will it take for humanity to stop these attacks?" "Justice," Kyle said simply. "Acknowledge that human lives have value. Agree to new laws protecting civilian ships and colonies. Support the prosecution of those who target innocents. It's not complicated. And if we agree, then we can all move forward together. We don't want to rule the galaxy, we just want to be safe in it." The vote was called. For the first time in galactic history, comprehensive laws protecting civilian populations were passed unanimously. Every species voted yes, though Kyle knew it was from fear rather than moral conviction. But he didn't care about their motivations, only the results. Back on Earth, President Harper was meeting with his advisors. The operation had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. Not only had they achieved justice for the horizon's dawn, but they had fundamentally changed the balance of power in the galaxy. "What's our next move?" his Secretary of Defense asked. "We build," Harper replied. "We've shown them the stick. Now we show them the carrot. Trade agreements, technology sharing, cultural exchanges. We make it more profitable to be our friend than our enemy. And if someone tests us again?" Harper's face hardened. "Then we remind them what happened to the Krelvax. But I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope the galaxy has learned its lesson." The galaxy had indeed learned. In every corner of known space, the message was clear. Humans were not to be trifled with. They could. 6 months had passed since humanity had changed the galaxy forever. The memorial service for the victims of the horizon's dawn was being held on Earth, but it was being broadcast across human space and beyond. Even some alien species were watching, trying to understand these strange humans who had upended everything. Admiral Lisa Carter stood at the podium. looking out at the thousands of family members gathered before her. Behind her, a massive monument bore the names of all 12,000 victims. Each name had been carved with care, ensuring they would never be forgotten. 3 years and 6 months ago, our people were murdered, Lisa began, her voice steady but full of emotion. Men, women, and children who had done nothing wrong except dare to reach for the stars. The galaxy expected us to accept it, to move on, to forget. She paused, looking at the faces before her. Many were crying, but there was something else in their eyes now. Not just grief, but pride. We did not forget. We did not accept. We remembered every name, every face, every dream that was cut short, and we made sure the galaxy will remember them too. In the crowd, Mary Johnson held a picture of her daughter and grandchildren. The pain was still there, would always be there. But now there was something else too. The knowledge that their deaths had meant something, had changed everything. The galaxy thought kindness was weakness, Lisa continued. They learned that human kindness is a choice, not a limitation. We choose mercy when it is deserved. We choose vengeance when justice demands it. And now the entire galaxy knows the difference. On Krelvax Prime, the scene was very different. The once proud empire was signing the Treaty of Horizons Dawn, formally accepting responsibility for the attack and agreeing to human oversight for the next century. Supreme Commander Vorthresh, its crystal body permanently dulled from defeat, placed its mark on the document. For 3,000 years, the Krelvax Empire stood unconquered, Vorthresh said to the assembled witnesses. Today, that empire ends. We accept the terms of this treaty and the consequences of our actions. Jake Coleman, now promoted to admiral, watched from the human delegation. He felt no joy in the Krelvax's humiliation, only grim satisfaction that justice had been served. Your empire ends, Jake said, but your species continues. Learn from this. Become better. In 100 years, when this treaty expires, you can choose what kind of people you want to be. The young Krelvax who had been learning from the humans stepped forward. Its body flickered with new colors, patterns that hadn't been seen in Krelvax culture before. We will remember this lesson, Admiral Coleman. We will become better. Jake nodded. Perhaps something good could come from all this pain after all. The Galactic Council had undergone massive changes. New laws were in place protecting civilian vessels. Any attack on non-military targets would result in immediate intervention by a joint fleet, with humanity leading the response. The days of the strong preying on the weak without consequence were over. Ambassador Kyle Morgan stood in the council chambers, looking at the new seat that had been installed for humanity in the inner council. It was placed equal with the oldest species, a symbol of humanity's new status. Zixtel, the Altarian representative, approached him. The alien's 6 arms were held in a gesture of respect. Ambassador Morgan, my people wish to formally apologize for our dismissal of your concerns about the Horizon's dawn. We were wrong. Kyle studied the alien for a moment. Apology accepted, Representative Zixtel. Let's focus on the future now. The future, Zixtel mused. It looks very different now. Your species has changed everything in just 6 months. What changes will you bring in the years to come? Hopefully peace, Kyle replied. We never wanted war. We just wanted to explore the stars without fear. Now maybe we can. The transformation of the galaxy's economy was even more dramatic. Human corporations had taken control of major trade, routes, and manufacturing centers. But instead of exploiting this power, they were using it to enforce fair trade practices. Pirates found themselves hunted by human security forces. Corrupt merchants found their illegal dealings exposed. Captain Steve Miller, who had led the economic warfare campaign, was now head of the new Galactic Trade Commission. His office on the council station was busy from morning to night with representatives from dozens of species seeking trade agreements with Earth. The Zephori are offering exclusive mining rights in their outer systems, Jennifer reported. Only if they agree to human safety standards for their workers, Steve replied. No more slave labor disguised as contract work. They won't like that. Then, They don't get access to our markets. Simple as that. The Zephyri agreed to the terms within the hour. They had learned that arguing with humans was pointless. You either played by their rules or you were excluded from the new prosperity they were creating. On Earth, President John Harper addressed not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. His words were being translated into hundreds of languages and transmitted to every inhabited world. 6 months ago, humanity showed the galaxy our strength. Today, I want to show you our vision for the future. We don't seek to rule over you. We don't want to destroy you. We want to build something better together. He paused, letting his words sink in across light years of space. We offer trade to those who trade fairly, protection to those who keep the peace, knowledge to those who seek to learn, but to those who would harm innocents, who would prey on the weak, who would choose violence over peace, we offer only one thing: consequences. The choice is yours. Be our neighbors, our trading partners, our friends, or be our enemies. But know that we have long memories and longer reach. Choose wisely. The Dreknari had become humanity's strongest allies. Their warriors were training with human forces, learning tactics that combined physical might with strategic thinking. In return, humans were learning from the Dreknari's 1,000 years of combat experience. Great warrior Thexar stood with Admiral Lisa Carter on the bridge of the Washington, watching joint training exercises. Your people fight with their hearts as much as their minds, Thexar observed. They remember why they fight, not just how. Every one of my soldiers knows the names of at least one victim from the horizon's dawn, Lisa replied. We fight so those names won't be forgotten, and so no new names need to be added to the list. The galaxy has never seen anything like your species. You terrify them. Good. Maybe fear will keep the peace where diplomacy failed. Thexar made a sound that might have been laughter. You humans are full of contradictions. Peaceful warriors, merciful vengeance, calculated emotion. No wonder the galaxy doesn't know how to handle you. On the newly constructed Sentinel Station, Admiral Jake Coleman commanded humanity's forward base. The station sat at the junction of 3 major trade routes, a constant reminder of human presence and power. Admiral, we're detecting a distress signal, Amy Foster reported. She had been promoted to captain and was now Jake's second in command. Details? Civilian transport under attack by pirates. Mixed species crew, about 300 souls. Distance? 20 minutes at maximum speed. Jake didn't hesitate. All ships, prepare for jump. We have civilians to protect. Within minutes, 4 human warships jumped to the rescue. The pirates, seeing human vessels approaching, immediately tried to flee. They didn't get far. The human ships disabled them with surgical precision, rescued the civilian transport, and captured the pirates for trial. The rescued ship's captain, a wanderer, sent a message of gratitude. We thought we were dead. Then you came. We protect innocent lives, Jake replied. Doesn't matter what species. That's what we do now. Word of the rescue spread quickly. Within days, requests for human protection of trade routes had increased tenfold. Species that had once mocked humanity now begged for their protection. In a quiet garden on Earth, the families of the Horizon's Dawn victims gathered for a private ceremony. They had been given first claim to any reparations from the Krelvax and Vorthans. Some took it, some didn't, but all of them had something they hadn't had before: closure. Mary Johnson stood by the memorial wall, touching her daughter's name. A young woman approached her wearing an Earth Navy uniform. Mrs. Johnson, I'm Lieutenant Grace Evans. I wanted you to know that your daughter's name is on a plaque in the human embassy on the Council Station. Every alien who meets with us sees it. They know her name. They know all their names. Mary smiled through her tears. She would have liked that. She always wanted to make a difference in the universe. She did, ma'am. Her death changed everything. The galaxy is safer because of her sacrifice. It wasn't enough, would never be enough to bring back the dead, but it was something. As the ceremony ended and the sun set over Earth, President Harper stood with his advisors, looking at reports from across the galaxy. Peace was holding. Trade was flourishing. The new laws were being enforced. We did it. his Secretary of State said. We actually changed the galaxy. We settled the score, Harper corrected. Now the real work begins, building something better from the ashes of the old. Do you think it will last? Harper looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, human ships patrolled trade routes, human diplomats negotiated treaties, human merchants traded goods, human explorers pushed further into the unknown. It will last as long as we remember why we fought, as long